Beautiful day outside, so.
Okay, 8 o'clock, let's call the finance committee meeting to order. All members are present. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as published and also approve the minutes from the November finance meeting.
Make that motion?
Doak. Second by Paul. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed. Hearing none, motion is carried. Anyone here for public comment? See, no one. Okay, let's move on to the monthly financials, the medical, dental, and the overtime. How are you gonna handle it?
No, sir.
Normal.
We'll start with sales tax. Most recent payment was 179,183, and your year to date up to 1,302,000. We caught up a little bit with where we were last. We're only $3,000 shy. We have two more payments to come in. No, 3 more payments to come in. December, January, February, all conferences this year. In there is probably our biggest payment of the year. So we might be ahead of where we were last year. As opposed to what I thought that maybe we're plateauing or might be behind. That's it for that. No contingency requests beyond what the 2-week process, and at this point in the year, I wouldn't necessarily expect them. All of the budget issues we had were addressed in previous months. There are a couple departments, including mine, that might be a little bit over. We don't have to start counting every $500,000 unless you really want to do all that, but then we'd be very busy doing a lot of little numbers that really don't add up. My support contracts in the last couple of years have increased faster than I could keep up with them. I expect 3 to 5%, but because of the inflation, now they're catching up. So I think in the 2025 budget, I have a note here for the highway internal service fund. They look like they're ahead, but that's very seasonal. The construction season's in summer. Winter, we've got another month to go, actually 2 months on the financials, and that depends on how much snow and ice we get. And public health looks a little odd, but again, the general fund part of it, the non-grant part of it, they're at 77%, where our target was 80 something. I put a different page. So they're well within their budget. 2 other things worth mentioning. Our auditors will be here next week for the interim part of their audit. That's where they test the procedures, they test their policies, they take payroll and they take payments and trace them all the way through to make sure we're following what they say we should be following and make sure everything's okay. And then when they come back in the spring, then they actually put numbers together so you can put the audited financial report together. Yesterday at a bond rating call from Moody's, they usually do an annual update, they call it. I don't particularly enjoy these, but it did go well. They actually previously they indicated the annual update was just to confirm the rating they got. They did indicate at the end of this one that it was possible that the rating would go up. So how possible? I don't know. I'll find out next Friday. So if that happens, I'll send out an email because that is good. I do think, I'm biased obviously, but I do think we're worth at least 1 increase in our bond rating, at least possibly 2, but a county our size in Wisconsin will probably never be AAA just because of the limits put on us. But we certainly can be a little better than where we are, and hopefully this brings us there. Last thing is usually in about March, if I have all the information, we'll have some unfinished projects from the old year that would have to be carried into the new year. So I've started a list of likely items. So The doors in the jail, we budgeted 20,000. I believe they've asked for the work to be done. It's just a matter of the contractor scheduling it and getting here. So that's likely to carry over to 2025. I've got courthouse camera security upgrade. I think that work is done, so I think that would not be carried over. To verify that. Parks has a few projects. It's done. Okay, so we just haven't got the bill for that one yet. Parks had a few projects, some pit toilets that were going to be replaced and some trail work. I've got a truck written down here, but that one came in. And then the human services wraparound house, that whole thing is kind of on hold right now. That's what's still in the 2025. So those items, once we have 60 days or so into next year, I'll know. Here's how much was budgeted in 2025 revenue and expense if there is any revenue for it, and the parks does have some grant revenue. And that'll be carried forward in 2025, come through this committee, and then because the budget adjustment will have to go to the board as well. That's all I have for this month, unless there's any questions.
Any questions on the financials? Yeah.
As far as health and dental reports, these are the ones that usually would have arrived for the last meeting. They seem to be a little bit slower now. I think the information flow from Centevo was a little slower, so they always hit the cutoff like they did before. But it's over. This is September. So it's still an indicator that things are going well. The percentages, well, and year to date are going well for health and dental. And again, this is an earlier peak than what our general ledger does, because we don't see that until after the bills are paid and after anything is received. This sees it beforehand and do that calculation. Unless there's any questions on that, we also have the overtime report. Nothing special to point out on this one. I will say that for December, next month, December, we'll have 2 actual payrolls, and then we have to accrue the year end. The first payroll paid in 2025 is actually entirely 2024 work dates. So there will end up being 3. And on top of that, there's a bonus because there's the holidays. The sheriff's department in particular, they'll pay holidays. They will also pay people because they're 24/7 operations. They'll be working. So their overtime tends to go up in December because of that. Are there any questions on any of those 3?
Any questions on the overtime? Medical, dental? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the 25 insurance renewals from County Mutual.
Okay.
I know we did some of them already.
Yeah, we did one. We did workers' comp last month. Once upon a time, we didn't have all of these in November. We've got the big ones now. We have liability, property, and public employee blanket. So liability is listed. It did go up. The rates are going up. Price of everything's going up. Insurance premiums are catching up. So the 171, the general liability, general auto, public employees, that's almost a 6% increase. That's due to the rates. The 15,000 below that, the deductible fund. We have I guess we call it an escrow account there. So as we have claims and there's deductibles, they just take it out of that rather than us paying them for each time. So that goes up and down as there's claims. Yeah, it's down from last year, but that doesn't really mean much other than we're just replenishing our $75,000 escrow. So we had less claims last year that the deductible was applied. The additional endorsements, when we have a request or a need for listing somebody else on our insurance. For example, we have some radio equipment on top of somebody else's tower. The owner of that tower wants to be an additional insured. So if there's damage done, they're a part of the insurance claim process. So we have to pay for a little bit for those. Go on to property. Property, we see more of a difference. We did have the County Mutual program came and they're starting to do appraisals on a rotating basis. So every 3 years, we're going to have an appraisal of not everything we have property wise, but they pick larger dollar amounts and things that haven't been updated in a while to catch I guess the largest potential for being outdated appraisal. So we did have an increase in our value and there was an increase in the rate similar to the liability rate. So the property portion of it did go up 20%. That's a mix of rate increase and the fact that our value goes up. However, we have a much better value on what our buildings and nearby property are for that. So if we have a claim previously, we were at risk for some, underinsured issues. The equipment breakdown, that's a rate increase. 41% is a bit sharp, but it's a small dollar amount. So that covers a lot of things. And that one too, one claim can get that back for us. We had a drone that failed during flight into the sheriff's department. And I think it was a $16,000 drone. The equipment breakdown covered it. Although physical damage is an increase there, that's mostly because of our increased claims. We've had an increased number of deer and raccoon hits. Deer hits, you see deer all over the place. We've had an increased number of raccoon hits, two or three in the last few years. So that one's based on cost of repairing is obviously increased like everything else. And then our rate of claims is up a little bit. And the fact that, our cars are built out of plastic and fiberglass now. So when you hit a deer with your old 1970 truck, you may have dinged it a little bit. Now things shatter and you have to replace it all. And God forbid the airbags go off, because then it's almost immediately a question of is it total or is it fixable? The public employee blanket, it's our crime policy. It's written here. Fraudulent impersonation, forgery, altercation, theft, computer funds transfer. That one didn't change from last year, surprisingly. So those are the ones we have. The two that are outstanding at the position bond, that was $691 last year. That one hasn't changed in 4 or 5 years I've been here. That covers elected officials. Storage tank liability, that's for the fuel tanks at the highway. I honestly don't think we're going to get that done before year end, because that one starts with a questionnaire, which would then have to go to the highway, question about the tanks themselves. Then it goes back and forth between County Mutual and Crum and Foster. And then we get an invoice and everything else. So we may be discussing that one early January. Position bond, I'd be surprised if it wasn't here before then. So
When does the tank insurance lapse?
when does it lapse? It's a calendar year, just like everything else.
So we'll be going without insurance for a while?
We pay it late. I don't like paying it on January 5th or 6th. I did contact Wisconsin counties and say, look, our finance committee meeting is today. Our next one is probably January 3rd, I think the date was. If we want approval, it should be today. I didn't tell them we could meet with the county board because I don't want to give them it out necessarily. So they got 3 of the outstanding 5. I don't think the position bond is that big a deal, but that storage tank liability, I know that process takes a little longer. That one's going to be more likely to be the last one than anything else. I did pay I think it was a public employee blanket position bond. I think I paid those in January once in the last few years because they arrived later. So we may be scheduling a meeting before the county board if we get the information for that. That's not that far away though, so I'm not sure it's going to be good. I'll have to let you know as it arrives. So today's question up for approval today is the liability, property, and public employee blanket.
Any other questions on the coverage? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the liability, the property, and the public employee blanket policies.
I'll make that motion.
Bills, I can second by Jeff to approve the insurance renewals for liability, property, and public employee blanket. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Carried.
I was going to mention, we didn't do it this year. We did it last year and the year before. We review the policy that covers the deductible level, especially. Last year, I think we upped some of the deductibles. The one we left was auto physical damage. We absolutely get money on that, even with only $1,000 deductible. Again, mostly deer, or those suicidal raccoons, I guess.
They come in groups. Oh, didn't we go through those highway fuel tanks just a year ago or so and they went through the whole thing?
For the insurance purpose, they have that questionnaire every single year.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Cause I thought we went through and revisited that whole liability part of our liability on those tanks.
Yeah, every year Todd would have to fill a question. Now Marty, so
Yeah.
it might take him a little longer because he probably hasn't seen this before. He's gonna ask.
I get it. Okay, okay.
But even the insurance side of it. So they ask those same questions every single year.
Okay.
And I would be very surprised, I shouldn't say that. I'd be surprised if it went up much because we have new tanks now. Back when we had the underground tanks, they're 20 years old. This thing shot up to 12 or 13 dollars.
Right.
And we put the new tanks in and it went back down to about 1,000.
Okay, next there's a item on the agenda for approving stale checks. There's 4 checks and total amount is $195.15. These are checks that were issued and never cashed.
Yeah, we have this process at the end of every year. The last 2 years, we haven't had any checks. So here we have 4 relatively small checks. And we go through a process trying to find them. Depending on how many days it's outstanding. And these are the ones that either never responded or don't care enough to actually cash it. So we have to go through the process of having them declare them stale checks. And then there's a date on here by statute where we can actually officially becomes back the property of the Kewaunee County. 2028 for these. And we have I would be less than 1,000, maybe less than 1,500 total checks pending out there. We have to hang on to it for 6 years before it officially reverts back to the county. There's a few years out there, the last 2 years, 0, which is good. So the approval today by the committee would allow us to void the check, track it for the next few years, and then eventually comes miscellaneous uncashed check and everything.
So is there a motion to approve the 4 checks in total $195?
Yeah.
Jeff, second from Steve. Questions?
Now, does that go with this unclaimed property on that listing that comes out? Like you see in published?
This one has a statute that says, so we, the treasurer's office webpage has the list, the full list. So we keep track of it. The list you're talking about is that from the state Department of Revenue?
When you see published in the paper.
Yeah. The statute says we publish it and then in 6 years we keep it. That list, so if you were in business and you had somebody with an unclaimed check, you're supposed to send it to the state. The state keeps track of it and publishes it on that list. Not necessarily just checks. I think they have actual property through jewelry and whatnot. So our process is similar to theirs, but it's not on the same list. And this list won't appear on there because the statute carves it out differently for reasons I don't know. And I think the clerk of courts even has a different schedule, a different statute to follow. Everything is court system.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the approval of tax deeds from 2020. There's one.
And Michelle couldn't make it, so I'll take that. I'll be the only one talking here.
Oh, there's only one.
Yeah,
so-
Michelle couldn't make it, but yeah, we have one. This is for a house in a few acres. The owner currently lives in it. They are, I guess, frequent customers. They tend to be on this list year after year. The good news is they do live there. They want to continue living there, and they have historically paid before the last day. So the process here is after 3 years. This is a 2020 unpaid tax. Comes to this committee. The committee would then recommend to the county board. The county board would then approve taking it. And then the actual date that the county takes it is typically December 31st. to give them as much chance as possible in the current year. But then it's done on December 31st, the next tax year is it's a clean tax, but we own it, so there's no more taxes on there, and then we don't have the taxes anymore. So today would be recommending to the county board would approve it. The actual date of taking it, assuming they continue to not pay it, would be later, typically on December 31st.
And as long as they come in before December 31st, then they get to buy themselves another
And
year.
they bought themselves another year, yeah.
And they don't have to pay the full amount, right?
Oh, no, they have to pay this one off. So this is for tax year 2020. They probably, I didn't look it up. They
They'll have to pay
probably,
2020.
Yeah,
They don't have to pay the full amount.
so they'll pay 2020s off, they'll buy themselves another year, but they'll still have 3 years of unpaid taxes, and we're charging them 18%. So it's an expensive route. to go.
Win-win.
If you ever get your money.
I'll make a motion to approve taking of a 2020 tax deed property.
A second. Steve, second. Any questions, discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion carried.
That's a resolution.
So now it comes forward.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is, review of vendor payments. There was around line. Anybody have any questions on vendor payments?
One comment on there, so under the cover page, there's now a summary report. And Crystal's in the process of writing that one doesn't tie out exactly, that's the format though. So we had a request to have a summary report that apparently was in there before. The only one I remember had net pay on, which to me isn't very useful. This one, it's a few more pages, but it shows gross payments, so you can distinguish between per diem, expense reimbursements, and mileage, that type of stuff. And it gives a subtotal by employee. So that the corrected, updated version of that's the format that will be included with each one. So you can look through individual vouchers, or you can look at the summary, or you can look at both.
I would entertain a motion to approve the supplemental payroll as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Steve. Discussion. If not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Any other matters coming before the committee? I just have just an inquiry. I don't know if this is the right place, but with this, changing of proposed law in Act 10, is that going to have any effect on, or is it going back to appeal, or? Yeah, I don't know a lot about it.
It's still pretty brand new. I don't think that there's any change that we need to take at
Not
this
to worry
point.
about it right now.
We're, when the court changes something, usually it takes some time for the legislature and everybody else to catch up. So once that starts to unfold a little bit, we'll have some better answers.
I may go back to appeal.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little.
Yeah, it's anticipated that it's gonna take a couple more court rulings before there's a final decision made. So if Act 10 were fully repealed, there would be huge ramifications and we'd have a lot to do. So we're just in a wait and see mode with the court process.
This won't be a short term thing.
No,
To go on court system as well. And there's a lot of, there've been previous court rulings that ruled the other way, and then there's questions about questions. So, yeah, they ruled that way, and it's good to be aware of it. But there's gonna be a long process.
We are watching it and so is Wisconsin counties and
yeah.
it's obviously a huge issue that we've got our eye
Everybody.
on.
Does that mean then that they can also reorganize unions?
Doesn't mean anything yet.
Well, theoretically, if it's
Yes,
overturned,
it's under, well,
Theoretically,
it
It will
is-
come
it's been
down
appealed
to,
right now, so.
it will come down to the state Supreme Court. rate.
ultimately, that's where it's going.
If the liberal majority holds its majority, then you're gonna have Act 10 will be repealed. I guarantee it. And it will have huge ramifications upon the county and the state and property taxes. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone have anything? Anybody? Milt,
Next.
anybody?
Why would, excuse me, why would it affect property taxes? Chairman Olson,
Huh?
why would it affect property taxes?
Well, obviously, if you have, benefits that will be increased, you will have, all sorts of, you'll have all of the employees will be unionized, or potentially. How would that not increase
Okay,
property
but we have
taxes?
limits, but if you think of northern Wisconsin in particular, they're already at their wits' end for a lot of those. If you start adding the Wisconsin retirement contribution back on there. Yeah, they're at the levy limit, but they're gonna have to either A, ask for a levy when it increase,
Right.
or just drastic cuts. Either way, it's gonna affect everybody in the state.
It will be wild.
But if they're gonna basically drop Act 10 as it currently is, doesn't that then give the municipalities, governing bodies, the authority to do the levy back where it was, where you could increase it whatever you wanted?
No.
Different statutes and the levy limit started
I hear
in the late
what you're saying.
90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, somewhere around.
It was
Prior-
long before.
prior
I
to
thought there
Act
was
10,
something
yeah.
tied to Act 10 though with the levy limit. Nothing?
Yeah, at any rate, I think there's a whole lot of unknowns right now. You guys are highlighting many of them. But we just gotta wait and see where the courts rule, how they find on different things. But yeah, these are all valid issues that we'll get some clarity on over time.
Maybe it'll be clear.
Yeah, we hope for clarity. There'll be decisions made.
Yeah.
Anything else to come before the committee? If not, our next meeting will be Friday, January 3rd, 8 o'clock.
And a potential for one before the county board meeting,
Possibly.
that will not be more than a half.
Let us know. about it.
Yeah, I'll look.
With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Doak, second by Steve to adjourn. All in favor?
All right.
Aye, opposed, or